1953 Iranian coup, when democracy was overthrown in secret. It wasn't a revolution. It was a heist, a geopolitical burglary executed in silence. The vault? Iran's oil reserves. The casualty? A burgeoning democracy. The 1953 Iranian coup wasn't just Cold War posturing or covert chess between empires. It was a blueprint, a manual for modern imperialism cloaked in diplomacy. Oil was the currency, fear was the justification, and behind the curtain of liberty, democracy was quietly strangled. Operation Ajax would not be the last of its kind. It was the prototype. Why Mossadegh had to go. Mohammad Mossadegh wasn't a revolutionary firebrand. He was a refined, elderly statesman with a doctorate from Switzerland, a man steeped in constitutionalism and anti-colonialism. As Prime Minister, he stood not on radical ideology, but on a conviction that Iran's resources should benefit its people. At the heart of his vision was oil, long extracted, refined, and profited from by the British through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. While British executives lived in luxury, most Iranians remained in poverty. Roads crumbled, schools were few. The imbalance was colonialism by economics. In 1951, Mossadegh nationalized the oil industry. The move was wildly popular at home, infuriating abroad. Britain launched a global campaign to strangle Iran economically. They imposed embargoes, froze assets, and pressured allies to isolate Mossadegh diplomatically. But the Prime Minister held firm. No compromise, no surrender. To the British, he was obstinate. To Iranians, he was a symbol of sovereignty. And to the United States, emerging as a Cold War titan, he became a pawn in a larger narrative. By branding him a communist sympathizer, though he was not, the British found the words America needed to hear. President Eisenhower, wary of Soviet expansion, approved the covert plan. Not to stop communism, but to protect profit. Operation Ajax in motion. Conceived by the CIA and MI6, Operation Ajax was a masterstroke in manipulation. The goal was simple: create chaos, erode confidence, and then remove Mossadegh. To do it, they built a campaign of illusion. They funneled millions into bribes to generals, parliamentarians, clerics, and even mob leaders. They drafted false narratives, planting sensational headlines in newspapers from Tehran to New York. Agents fanned protests in the streets. Some shouted pro-Mossadegh slogans. Others demanded his death. The contradiction was deliberate. Confusion breeds fear. Fear opens the door to intervention. British operatives and American agents coordinated strikes, distributed propaganda, and destabilized the public mood. Even royalist forces were nudged into motion. On August 19, 1953, with tanks in the streets and saboteurs in the crowd, the coup succeeded. Mossadegh was arrested. The Shah, who had fled days earlier, returned triumphant. What was framed as a people's restoration was, in truth, a surgical excision of democracy. American and British intelligence operatives celebrated quietly, and for decades, their governments denied everything. What the West installed. The Shah's return was not just ceremonial. He was now a monarch remade by empire. Empowered by foreign backing, he ruled not with consensus, but coercion. The CIA and Israel's Mossad helped create Savak, his secret police. They were trained to suppress dissent, torture political prisoners, and monitor every whisper of opposition. Iran's parliamentary institutions withered, elections were rigged, media censored. The wealth from Iran's newly opened oil fields flowed again, but to foreign companies and elites. Ordinary Iranians saw little change in their lives. The West called it stability. But on the ground, it was fear wrapped in silence. Mossadegh had imagined an Iran led by law. In his place, the world installed rule by decree. The coup not only ended a leader, it erased a democratic possibility. The silence and the blowback. For over 2 decades, the official story remained unchanged. Western powers denied involvement. Iran's state media fed narratives of divine monarchy. But the truth smoldered in the shadows. By the late 1970s, that buried resentment ignited. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was not born overnight. It was the eruption of years of repression, betrayal, and foreign interference. Massive protests swept across the country. The Shah fled again, this time for good. Iran erupted in fury. The US embassy became a focal point of rage. Dozens of American diplomats were taken hostage. The event shocked the world. To many Iranians, it wasn't just about the present. It was payback for 1953. In 2000, the CIA declassified internal reports confirming what many already knew. Operation Ajax happened. They planned it, they funded it, they executed it, and they buried it. The coup that echoes today. Operation Ajax was more than a one-time betrayal. It became a doctrine. From Latin America to Southeast Asia, the pattern repeated. Identify a leader opposing Western interests. Label them a threat. Destabilize, remove, replace. In Guatemala, it was Jacobo Arbenz. In Chile, Salvador Allende. In Iraq, similar strategies paved the way for future conflicts, all under the guise of freedom. What Operation Ajax taught the world was simple. The language of liberation can hide the machinery of control. It redefined sovereignty as negotiable, contingent upon economic alignment. And it etched into global memory a bitter lesson. Democracy, if inconvenient, can be undone overnight. They called it freedom. But it began with sabotage and ended in silence. The 1953 coup in Iran was more than regime change. It was the quiet rewriting of history, for oil, for influence, for empire. And when democracy becomes an obstacle, truth is the first to fall. Subscribe to Past Redacted, because in a world where secrets build nations, history is the first casualty. Next time, the Bengal famine. Was it engineered by empire?